I worked 3 jobs a day to pay for Ethan's schooling. After he graduated, the wealthy family reinstated his identity. He became the heir of City A. Everyone said my hard days were finally over. I was about to be promoted to a wealthy family's wife. Only I, standing behind his dazzling presence, asked him, "Shall we break up?" He was momentarily stunned, then smiled awkwardly. What a silly thing to say. I saw his hesitation and smiled lightly. "It's all right, you don't have to make things difficult for me. I'll leave by myself." That night I packed my bags and left the rented room that had held 3 years of memories with him. "Do you want to break up?" Ethan was clearly taken aback, as if I'd touched a raw nerve. When he saw me watching him, perhaps feeling guilty, he ruffled my hair and forced an awkward smile. "What silly thing are you saying?" Just now I'd heard him talking with a high school classmate. "Man, your life is a total turnaround, even Goddess Vivian has to crawl back to you. Back in high school she wouldn't even glance at you, must feel great now. I heard your family's even arranging a marriage with the Wens, but what about that delivery girl girlfriend of yours?" At the time I was still hoping he'd say something like a novel's male lead, that he wouldn't marry anyone but me, but he lowered his head and said indifferently, "I've been meaning to break up for a while. She and I just can't connect. Let nature take its course. Besides, the Xie family would never let me marry someone who delivers takeout. So all these years it was me clinging to him. In his eyes I was just a delivery girl, not good enough for him. Yet not long ago he still held me and said he'd be with me for all eternity. I thought I knew him well enough. 2 years ago I worked around the clock to earn our living, not even having time to eat instant noodles. My friends pitied me and said it wasn't worth it, worried I'd end up with nothing. I swore to them that Ethan wasn't that kind of person. Reality slapped me hard. All along I had been indulging in wishful thinking. Everything I did was one-sided, and to him it had become a burden. If he didn't like me, he could have said so outright. Why, then, did he repeatedly look at me with those ardent eyes and tell me I was the only one for him? He drew me deeper and deeper in, and I deceived myself into believing he loved me too. I almost forgot that the person he liked at the start was not me. In high school, everyone knew Ethan was courting Vivian, and I watched it happen with my own eyes as a bystander. Back then Ethan was poor, his once white uniform worn through spring, summer, autumn and winter. He was rich, too. He could give Vivian a limited edition music box, could get her concert tickets no one else could. But none of that meant anything to Vivian. He wasn't the only one who could give music boxes, and those hard-to-get tickets would be shoved into her hands by someone else the next second. From beginning to end Vivian looked down on him, treating him as a fool to be commanded at will. She ground Ethan's dignity into the dirt again and again, and he still followed her willingly. I don't even know when I started to like Ethan. Maybe it was watching the light in his eyes get crushed over and him forcing himself to piece it back together. The broken boy looked at the light he wanted to protect with nothing but sincerity, forgetting that he had long since been battered and scarred all over. The light and shadow saw through his wounds and wanted to hold him and fill them. I couldn't bear to see the boy hurt again, so I urged Vivian to turn back and look at that shadow she couldn't shake. She sneered, amused at my foolishness. Later, someone secretly photographed Vivian, and Ethan beat that group of people badly to defend her. He was convicted and left with a criminal record. Vivian refused to clear his name and her whole family flew abroad. He had originally been admitted to a 985 university, but his offer was revoked because of the record. He didn't see anyone. I ignored the glass he had smashed and walked to his side. Only when the warm blood ran down his calf did he stop smashing things and hand me a bandage. "You should go. Don't waste your time on me. I'm useless now. Let me die on my own, okay?" At that time he had given up on himself, and I feared he'd go to extremes, so come rain or shine I brought him 3 meals a day and watched until he finished them. I searched the internet for all kinds of inspirational stuff, trying to pull him out of it. Until his drunken foster father called me to say he'd slit his wrist, bled too much, and been taken to the hospital. That day his adoptive father yelled something terribly cruel at him: "If you're going to die, go die outside, don't die and bring bad luck on the house." When I adopted you, I thought you were smart and could look after me in old age. Who knew I was raising a burden?" I couldn't stand it and grabbed Ethan by the collar, starting to scold. "Ethan, pull yourself together. Go look at who out there has it easy. They freak out over nothing, think the sky is falling at the slightest thing. When the bullets get to the doorstep, they don't think about how to deal with it, they think only about running away. Is it just because your acceptance letter was revoked? Big deal, try again. What's so impossible to get over? If you can't even handle this little setback, no wonder Vivian looks down on you." He was so stunned by my scolding that he didn't know what to do, his eyes rimmed red as he looked at me. In that miserable family, excellent grades were the only thing that let him stand tall. I wiped the tears leaking from the corners of his eyes. "You're so smart, your life can't end like this. Get through it and everything will be fine." At the time I didn't know where my confidence came from either. I grabbed him and moved into a rented room together. My grades were mediocre at best, I could at most get into a vocational college. My family wanted me to start working early to help out, and gave me 5,000 yuan to go out into the world and make something of myself for them. Ethan saw I was struggling and suggested I give up my studies. I immediately stopped him, telling him to handle only my education and leave everything else to me. By day I washed dishes at a restaurant, by night I delivered takeout, and whenever I had a spare moment I handed out flyers on the roadside. That was how I barely covered my living expenses. One night, trying to earn extra money to buy Ethan some reference books, I took dozens of delivery orders and finally collapsed from exhaustion by the side of a bridge. Ethan stared at my bandaged legs with reddened eyes. I forced a smile and told him it didn't hurt. He pulled me into his arms and called me an idiot. He said I was his fate, swearing he would make sure I lived well from then on. Unsurprisingly, he eventually got into a 211 university. After the Xie family learned of everything I'd done for him over the years, they handed me a bank card. I felt somewhat at a loss. For 3 years, I wasn't doing it for a bank card. Ethan used to promise me he'd give me a good life, but I never dared hope for a life of lavish excess. I thought that being with him honestly and steadily would be a good life. A single bank card buying out the 3 years between him and me felt like an insult. It struck me as almost ridiculous. All my friends said my hard days were finally over, that I was about to be promoted to a wealthy housewife, but I knew better. How could a grand family possibly marry someone like me? It should be a match of equals, comparable circumstances, like Vivian. Ethan had liked Vivian from the start. What he felt for me was more likely pity, maybe since university he'd felt we had nothing in common. Back then he said I couldn't understand academic topics, and I said he didn't care to hear about the things I encountered delivering food every day. Later I noticed he was speaking less and less. I'm a person who lacks a sense of security to an extreme. In my eyes he was so outstanding, surrounded by beauties at university, and I was afraid he'd change his heart. I kept repeating tests to prove whether he loved me, and would blurt out that line at the drop of a hat, "Don't forget who paid for your college." During the worst argument, I forced him to take me to buy a DR diamond ring and made him promise we'd get married as soon as university was over. He stood there stunned for a long moment, then took that ring out of a drawer. He said he'd bought it a long time ago. I knew that ring didn't really suit being worn on my hand, but I still chose to keep deceiving myself and put it on. I looked at him intently, my obsession driving me to stubbornly ask once more, "Seriously, do you want to break up?" He saw my earnest expression, put away his smile, and fell silent. I laughed at my own foolishness. What was I really chasing after? I had clearly already guessed the answer, yet I kept deceiving myself, wondering if I might be wrong. But the ring on my ring finger was one he had personally placed there, and the brochure said such a ring could only be bought once in a lifetime. I had loved him for so many years, how could I not have been indulging in wishful fantasies? I turned and pretended to be busy watering the champagne roses on the balcony. The champagne roses on the balcony were something we had grown together. I decided to buy them when I passed a florist and read the flower sentiment on the tag. He asked me then when I had developed a fondness for gardening. I said it was pretty, but more than that it was because of the flower's meaning, only devoted to you. He came up behind me and whispered, "Wendy, you'll always be the most important person to me." Tears welled up all at once. My eyes are supposedly big enough to hold the whole world, yet why are they also so small that they can't even hold a few drops of tears? I turned my back to him, not wanting him to see me disheveled, quickly wiped my tears, and blurted out, "Then what about Vivian?" He fell silent and did not speak again. I looked up at the window, forcing the wind to blow the tears from my eyes. I set the vase down, turned to face him, and struggled to take the ring off. The ring had shrunk by a size. When it had been forced on, it had pinched painfully. Now that it came off, it felt much looser, like a weight lifted. I shoved the ring into his hand. "Here," I said. I looked at the imprint left on my finger. "Sorry, I stretched it for you." He opened his mouth to say something, but I did not want to hear it. The door suddenly swung open. A few of Ethan's college friends walked in and, seeing us standing together, one said, "I wondered why we'd been knocking for so long with no answer. Turns out the lovebirds were getting cozy." No choice, being a good-for-nothing who brings good things is my nature. Seriously though, we're here to bring you good news. Your paper won an award. Ethan's friends were suave and courteous, their manners measured. They all knew I existed, admired my abilities, and envied Ethan's luck. Over 3 years they came to the rented place often, aware of how meager our life was, and every visit they'd bring a pile of things. Ethan sat down and leafed through his award-winning paper. One of them patted his shoulder. "Not bad, kiddo. All that effort your sister-in-law put in wasn't for nothing." He looked at me awkwardly and replied clumsily, "Yeah, thanks to Wendy." His friend had an arm around him. "You have to bring your sister-in-law to the paper presentation this time, perfect chance to go have some fun." He looked up at me as if waiting for my response. Another friend chimed in, "Yeah, the story of the brave sister-in-law would go viral online for sure." I knew Ethan didn't want me to go. "I won't go. I can't stand those cultured places you all like. I'm an illiterate when it comes to that." His friend straightened his back excitedly, "Sister-in-law, what are you saying? We all really admire you, okay? I've never met a woman willing to work 3 jobs to support a man through school, and she's even beautiful." Ethan chimed in, "Come along, then. You've hardly gone out before. Think of it as a trip with a few good friends." No sooner had he spoken than everyone's gaze snapped to him. His friend wasn't exactly mild-mannered. "Good friends? What nonsense are you spouting? I heard your real father arranged a marriage for you, with that goddess from high school who got you thrown in jail." Seeing him fall silent, everyone grew more riled up, taking turns to lambaste him. "What, you actually want to go through with that marriage? Are you out of your mind? Leaving such a great sister-in-law for that woman? If you dare do something ungrateful, don't expect your sister-in-law to lift a finger. I'll be the first to kill you. Anyone capable of doing that isn't human." At last, the friend sitting beside him put his arm around him and patted his chest toward me. "Sister-in-law, don't worry. We'll discipline him for you. Even if he had 100 guts, he wouldn't do something like that." I smiled, and soon the topic was carried off by other matters, but Ethan never once defended himself. Friends had urged me more than once, "Wendy, are you really going to do this?" People's hearts change in an instant. There are plenty of cases like this online now. Can you guarantee that if he succeeds later he'll remain true to you? The more successful he becomes, the wider the gap between you two. Are you sure he'll genuinely want to marry you then? It was always a gamble, and I simply lost. Back then I hesitated, afraid to let the answer slip from my lips. Now the answer has become a denial. No. Ethan will not marry me. They soon gathered again to discuss academic topics, using technical terms I couldn't understand. Perhaps Ethan and I were never from the same world. I stood up and went back to the bedroom. This bedroom, too, held so many memories of Ethan and me. I remembered the beginning, when all we could afford was a leaking basement. The temperature was a few degrees below zero, rain seeping along the cracks and slowly soaking Ethan's back. I threatened to break up with him in order to swap places. The rain drenched me until I shivered. He held me tight and said he would never marry anyone but me in this life. I stared at the contacts for a long time before finally dialing the Xie family's number. My voice was awkward. "Auntie, about that bank card of yours." His mother sounded reasonably kind. "I've come to terms with it. Take the 8-figure sum, by all means. I'm very grateful for the way you've cared for my Ethan all these years." "If..." I barely started when she quickly changed the subject. "You're a smart girl. Take this money and start a little business, you can support yourself no problem." She wanted to say that if I weren't a delivery rider, if my family situation were a little better, I would surely have made Ethan marry me. But the world doesn't hand out that many ifs. I gave a low hmm. I stared around the bedroom for a long time and couldn't think of anything to take with me. The wardrobe was full of clothes, only 2 or 3 faded shirts in there were mine. I pulled one down and tossed it into the trash, then looked up and saw the photo of him and me on the bedside table. It had been taken on the Ferris wheel. A few dozen bucks got you 3 rounds, and I had been in the cabin, holding him and taking crazy photos. I picked it up, looked it over again, and finally tossed it into the trash. In the end, I left with only that card. As I was leaving, Ethan's friend asked me, "Sis-in-law, it's so late, where are you headed?" I made up an excuse on the spot. "A friend's having a birthday, I'm just going by." They replied, "Take us with you." Then, "More people, more fun." I smiled and declined gently, "No thanks, she doesn't do well with too much fuss." Ethan knew I was stalling. He sensed something, looked up, and stared at me solemnly. "I don't have many friends, the only one I've stayed close with this long is Fiona. Her birthday was just a little while ago." I waved my hand and, instinctively looking toward Ethan, said, "I'm leaving." Leaving, and not coming back. At 11 p.m., I left this place that held 3 years of my memories, clutching the card in my hand. In the end I accepted the card, just as my friend had said, "Don't end up empty-handed." I had worked so hard to lift Ethan up to the clouds. In the end he chose to abandon me, so this card is the cheapest consolation he could give me. It is what I deserve. I took his mother Elena's advice and found a spot in a mall development to open a franchised bubble tea shop. The location combined with the brand effect made the business boom, and I was so busy every day that I had no time to think about Ethan. When I saw a delivery courier sweating profusely, I would instinctively make an extra cup. Because it reminded me of my former self, and a fleeting thought crossed my mind, might some of them, like me, be working desperately to earn money to support a boyfriend or girlfriend through school? If fate gave me a chance to start over, would I make the same choices I made back then? But the world never offers that many ifs. After a long day, exhausted, I lay in my rental room and stared at the stark white ceiling, drifting into a daze. I didn't even know what I was thinking about, and tears welled at the corners of my eyes and slipped into the blanket. I wasn't thinking about Ethan. I raised my hand and looked at the red mark his grip had left on my fingers, wondering when it would fade. Just as I was drifting off, I got a call. The other side didn't speak. I glanced at the contact name, Ethan, and asked, "What's up?" He was quiet for a long time before asking, "Did you touch the things in the box?" Ethan had a box he treasured. Once I accidentally opened it and found it filled with everything about Vivian. Vivian's photos, every line of the conversations with her written in pen. I was furious when I saw them then. It was the first time he ever lost his temper with me. People online say a goddess's destructive power is unmatched, that she is the untouchable reverse scale of every man. In the end I chose to compromise. The box could stay, but it must never be opened again. I said calmly, "Ethan, we're broken up. Our promises to each other don't count anymore. Open the box whenever you want. I know those things mean a lot to you, I won't touch them." He seemed a little ashamed, and tentatively asked, "Did you throw away the photo of us on the bedside table?" I said calmly, "Well, it was going to be thrown away sooner or later anyway." The call fell into a long silence. I didn't know what else to say, so I just hung up. All drowsiness vanished. I walked to the balcony, stared into the pitch-black sky, and began to ponder the meaning of life. I started to wonder why liking someone doesn't translate into proportional happiness. I like Ethan, so I go all out to be good to him, but why can't I feel happiness? After much inner struggle, I reached a conclusion: to love another, you must first love yourself. Looking back, it seems I fell into a people-pleasing system. As a child, I repeatedly convinced myself to do things I didn't want to do to please my parents, only to receive love that wasn't even 1/10,000th as much as my younger brothers. Later I tried to please Vivian, obediently doing all the things she didn't want to do for her, and in the end she only saw me as a compliant servant. Then I tried to please Ethan. I have tried to please so many people, yet I never once thought to please myself. That night, perhaps in a moment of dizziness, I used the money left on that card to buy myself an apartment. The days that followed were busy with the renovation, busy running the milk tea shop. I had no time to wonder whether anyone loved me. I lived only for myself. I felt an unprecedented sense of relief, even regretting that I hadn't woken up sooner and had wasted time on someone unworthy. I ran into Ethan again at the neighborhood gate. A few of his friends were jostling him. "Ethan, if you don't win Wendy back, we can't call ourselves brothers. Are you out of your mind? Passing up a woman like that, what were you thinking?" That classmate from high school was there too. "I agree," he said. "Wendy is better than Vivian." Seeing Ethan again after more than a year, he was still outstanding, his features sharply defined and deep, his long dark lashes adding just the right touch of softness. Faced with his friends' teasing, he answered offhandedly, "We'll see if I run into her." By chance, I was right behind them. I heard that and intended to turn into the cafe beside us to hide. But the next second I ran straight into the milk tea shop clerk. "Sister Wendy." She looked very anxious. I asked her, "What's wrong?" She looked at me as if about to speak, then glanced behind her. I followed her gaze and looked back. Ethan was being shoved and egged on by his friends. "Isn't he right there? Hurry up and go. Meeting someone like Wendy in this lifetime is pure dog luck for you. If you let her slip away, you'll be the one crying later." This scene reminded me of the past. In his sophomore year, Ethan fell for a girl, pretty, always smiling. She looked like Vivian. He was off for a while back then. After pressing him, he confessed to me. He said he couldn't control himself, that his attraction to that girl was physical. I held back my tears and said fine, choosing to step aside. I was really stupid then, afraid he'd spend all his money buying gifts for her and starve himself. I transferred every penny I had into his account. Not long after, he was teased over here by a few friends just like today. Looking at his disheveled state, I forgave him before he could say a word. Thinking back, I had been hopelessly foolish, just as an online friend put it, one willing to hit, one willing to take it. I turned back to the clerk. "Don't pay attention to them." "What's the matter? Tell me." She hesitated and finally spoke. "It's, Wendy, I have some family things to deal with these days. Could I take some leave?" I sighed in relief. "Do I look like someone hard to get along with? Take a few more days off, sort things out at home, and come back." "Then thank you, Sister Wendy." I watched the clerk leave, and only when Ethan's voice sounded did I realize he was standing behind me. "Wendy." I turned to look at him. He stared at me blankly, those words forever stuck in his throat. His friends egged him on from behind. "Ethan, show some attitude, apologize to your sister-in-law and try to placate her." Countless times before, I wanted to hear him apologize. But he didn't, he never bowed his head to me first. Now, I don't want to hear it and I don't want it anymore. He glanced behind him and, as if forcing out a perfunctory question, asked me, "When are you moving back?" In his subconscious, I'm always just sulking. Once the anger fades, I'll go back by myself. He never thinks he's done anything wrong, so he's unwilling to lower himself and apologize to me. But I've already figured it out. The Xie family used a large sum of money as compensation for those 3 years, which has allowed me to live relatively comfortably now. Even if I hadn't paid for Ethan's schooling during those 3 years, with my background and credentials it's impossible that I'd be living like this. So, I didn't lose out. I looked at him and said, I'm not going back. He stared at me heavily, finally gave a grunt, and turned to leave. When those friends saw him come back, they crowded around to tease. So? Has your sister-in-law forgiven you? Have you returned the ring to her yet? I told you should have married sooner, always dragging this out wears us out to watch. I won't marry her if we don't reconcile. Ethan's voice was low, edged with impatience. His friends fell silent. He raised his voice, I never liked her to begin with. Why should I marry her? Just because she's grateful to me, I have to spend my life with someone I don't like? I only treat her like a friend. Hearing those words from his mouth, a sudden fury rose in me. 3 years, now he tells me he doesn't like her? What was he doing all this time? What does he take me for? Some girlfriend on call whenever he wants? I stepped forward briskly and slapped Ethan across the face with a sharp crack. This slap plus the bank card your mother gave me, our accounts are settled. Those 3 years you can think of as a time when my heart was smeared with lard, and I fell for a scumbag like you. This marriage? You want to marry me, but I won't marry you. Remember, I'm the one dumping you. Everyone stood there stunned, staring at me. I pressed my palm to my cheek, regretting not having slapped him sooner. Back when I was delivering takeout to pay for Ethan's schooling, I kept seeing stories about people who were eventually abandoned, so I searched them over and over until I finally came across a video where love ended happily. And then I would be happy for a long time, though exceptions must exist. Sadly, Ethan and I were not one of them. He was with Vivian, 3 posts a day, all of them their photos together. I guess ignorance was impossible. Before, when I asked him to post, he said that when you're in love you know it yourself, there's no need to broadcast it. But when you meet someone you like, how can you bear not to shout it to the world? We ran into each other again at a high school reunion. I hadn't intended to go, but Fiona dragged me along. Ethan and Vivian walked in hand, their fingers intertwined. Fiona gripped my hand tighter. Those 2 lovers. I patted her hand to soothe her. By now I could face it calmly, I could go and look at Ethan and Vivian without shame. Vivian was as beautiful as ever, standing out the moment she stepped into the crowd. Ethan saw me too and deliberately chose the farthest corner from me to sit. He pulled out a wet wipe and meticulously cleaned Vivian's cutlery from end to end, called the waiter for a hot towel, and helped Vivian dry her hands. Just like in high school, he took care of her in every little way. The whole dinner turned into their public display of affection. I hadn't even said disgusting before Fiona beat me to it. She said it angrily, then declared she was going to set me up with a 185 male model. I asked where he was and why she hadn't pushed his number to me yet. And just like that the floodgates opened, and my attention drifted away from Ethan and Vivian. Later, Fiona got drunk and I helped her out the door. Vivian called after me, after all these years, you still haven't changed a bit. I paused, and she continued, you only ever think about others, never yourself. I said nothing and kept supporting Fiona as we moved on. Vivian stepped forward and added, honestly, if Ethan were still as poor as he used to be, I wouldn't like him. He's a good man, but I'd never like someone inferior to me, that's the difference between you and me. I won't let myself fall into ruin for the sake of liking someone. I nodded. She had been clear-headed the whole time. Because she loved herself enough, she always lived brilliantly. I said self-mockingly, I also think I was pretty foolish before. Suddenly I found myself asking out of curiosity, if Ethan weren't a member of the Xie family, would you still be with him? She answered decisively and firmly, no. Bang! Suddenly, glass shattered at our feet. Ethan lost his temper because of the 2 sentences Vivian had said. He looked at Vivian, the frown on his brow slowly eased, and his tone grew gentle. They've already announced me as the missing young master of the Xie family. Why make such impossible assumptions? He would not allow such assumptions to be made because he was afraid that Vivian would leave him once more. The next morning, when Fiona woke up, she sent me a number. Those 2 lovebirds are showing off to you, hurry up and date someone too. Last night the mood and the alcohol made me say those things. Sober now, I think, I'm simply not ready to start a relationship. Right now I'm more inclined to focus on my career. The bubble tea shop has been booming these past few months, and I plan to expand. I gently turned her down. Let's just forget it. She assumed I was still hung up on Ethan and sent several long voice messages cursing him out. I enjoyed listening to them and replied with 3 rows of thumbs up emojis. The bubble tea business kept growing, the staff increased, and I gradually moved into the background. I used my free time to learn things I hadn't had a chance to before: piano, painting, and so on. Many people tried to curry favor with me during that time, but when I said I wanted to take things slowly, they all vanished as if avoiding the plague. Less than half a month later, you could see their posts showing off their girlfriends. My friends teased me for being a matchmaker by profession. I laughed along. I truly wasn't in a hurry. Before, my whole heart had been thrown at Ethan. Now I wanted to focus on myself first. I wanted to empty my heart out before letting someone new move in. When it came to love, I still hoped to meet someone sincere, craving a heart-to-heart connection. Ethan and Vivian broke up. He was the one who initiated it. Over the past half year I traveled everywhere, hiking, visiting exhibitions, wandering ancient towns and museums, constantly enriching myself. His university friends still treated me as a friend, kept an eye on my posts and occasionally checked in about life, and then, once again, news of Ethan reached my ears. After he and Vivian broke up, he went on a vengeful, whirlwind string of romances, and only later woke up and began to slow down. His friends would, half jokingly and half not, call me sister-in-law, dropping hints that Ethan was single and urging me to come back for a get-together. Fiona is getting married next month and told me I must return as a bridesmaid. I hadn't expected that the moment I stepped off the plane, everyone would be waiting for me. The first thing Ethan's friends did when they saw me was call out sister-in-law. When they realized something was off they switched to Wendy. "Sure, Wendy, you seem like a different person after going out." We had been exchanging polite small talk before someone, myself included, unconsciously brought up Ethan. I pretended not to hear and let it pass vaguely. The next second, his voice reached my ear. "You've lost weight." I felt such pleasantries no longer fit our relationship, but I didn't know what to say, so I offered the obligatory reply, "You too." He hesitated for a long time before speaking. "I'm not." My sentence was half finished when my phone rang and cut me off. I smiled apologetically at them. As soon as I answered, a man's deep, warm voice came through. "Wendy, where are you? Send me your location and don't move, I'll come find you." After I hung up, they all said that since we'd been apart so long they owed me a big meal to punish me for traveling without them. I laughed and said, "Sure, you pick the place, but you might need to add one more person." They looked around left and right, surprised. "Add who?" A man in a black windbreaker stood out in the crowd, clutching something bulky under his jacket at his chest as if protecting it. He unzipped and handed me a steaming bag of sugar-roasted chestnuts. "For you, already peeled." Before boarding, I casually said I wanted candied roasted chestnuts. He took my luggage, pinched a fold of cheek, and said, "You're so cruel, leaving me here alone for so long." Before I could introduce him, he noticed the stunned friends in front of us, put an arm around my shoulders and introduced, "Hello, I'm Wendy's boyfriend, Gavin." Sometimes fate is a strange thing, it arrives suddenly at unexpected times and places. That day, coming home from work as usual, the sound of a piano passing by caught my attention, and I followed the music to find that music room. He sat there in all black, perfectly straight, his long fingertips brushing the keys, each touch imbued with a mood. When I was little I loved listening to the sound of the cheen, but my family couldn't afford to let me learn it. Once we had the means, I often studied the instrument, yet it always felt a little off. Gavin's playing that day was peculiar, very special. No matter how many times he played afterward, he could never reproduce the feeling of that day. Maybe it was fate pushing us. That day we talked for a long time, and I, someone who wasn't good at conversation, opened up. Later, he confessed his feelings to me. I told him to take it slow. He didn't rush me, but matched my pace and moved forward step by step. Fiona accused with an angry face, "Fine if you hide them from others, but why not tell me too?" I scratched my head. "Sorry, I guess I was just caught up in things and forgot." Before anything was definite, I didn't like making a show of things. Last week, just as we confirmed our relationship, the milk tea shop happened to be expanding and flew off to scout locations in the northern part of City A. It was even more inconvenient for the two of us to handle things, so I had Gavin come back early. Gavin and Fiona's gazes swept over me. "What? You forgot me? To punish you, buy me 2 drumsticks, make them big. I'll buy them for you, double, as a meeting gift. If you're buying them, they won't be drumsticks anymore." Alright, pick whatever you want." Gavin was outgoing and quickly became one of them. They laughed and joked all the way to the restaurant, only to realize someone was missing. Ethan hadn't come. His friend called him, his voice sounded weak. My stomach suddenly went into spasms. "I'm at the hospital." Their expressions changed in an instant. "So sudden, could it be the polyps again?" His voice was hoarse and tired. "No, it's nothing, just ate something bad. Don't worry about it." Ethan has a sensitive stomach. He used to get polyps in his stomach, so he had to see a doctor every couple of weeks. Though he always said he was fine, as friends they were still worried. They looked at me awkwardly, so I gave them an out. "Go check on Ethan. Stomach pain isn't something to take lightly. We can eat this meal any time. Besides, I'm tired from the flight and want to go rest." After they left, Gavin squeezed my hand. "Can you sleep on an empty stomach?" How did he know my stomach had growled several times just now? I brushed past his question and casually picked up my chopsticks. "Then let's finish eating here before we go. We've come all this way anyway." He propped himself up on the table with both hands, turned toward me and smiled, though I couldn't tell what he was smiling about. On the way back I grumbled with mock annoyance, "It's all your fault for ordering so much and not eating it. Everyone in the restaurant must think I'm a pig reincarnated." He pinched my wrist, voice a little teasing. "You've gotten thinner, huh?" Before I could catch the meaning behind his words, he pinched a roll of flesh on my cheek. "But I feel like you've put on quite a bit of weight." "Gavin." We were clowning around on the way back when suddenly a figure blocked our path. Gavin reflexively tightened his grip on me. I hadn't expected someone who should have been in the hospital to appear at the apartment gate. When Gavin saw it was Ethan, his voice was unhurried, the tail of his sentence lifting almost unconsciously. "Ethan? Is your stomach any better?" I reflexively looked at Ethan. The flesh of my cheek was pinched again. Ethan glanced at Gavin without replying, only giving a small smile. Then he looked at me and called, "Wendy." I instinctively let go of Gavin's hand and stood straight. He looked at me. "Long time no see." I felt oddly unsettled, glanced up at Gavin, forced a couple of polite laughs. "Long time no see." He looked back and forth between me and Gavin. I hurried to introduce. "This is my boyfriend Gavin, we just met." He scoffed, gave a low hum. Then he said, "Actually, I'm not the son of the Xie family." I already knew. For a while every platform had been pushing the Xie family custody mix-up story. The hospital had messed up the DNA sample collection. Sounded absurd, but that was the fact. I didn't need to guess about what came next. He found out he wasn't the heir of the Xie family, knew Vivian wouldn't be with him anymore, and he was the one who initiated the breakup. Later, trying to forget Vivian, he threw himself into relationships, but he couldn't forget her, so he stopped dating altogether. So? What does any of that have to do with me? I replied calmly, "I know." My words left him speechless. He wouldn't be trying to get me to support him like an idiot again, would he? I looked at him and blurted out before I could stop myself, "You're out of money?" Gavin looked down at me puzzled, glanced at Ethan, hesitated for a moment and said, "Ethan, if something's wrong just say it. We're friends, we'll help as much as we can." Ethan ignored him and instead called to me again, "Wendy." Gavin leaned in toward my ear with a puzzled look, his voice loud enough for the security guard at the door to hear. "Does your friend have a fear of handsome men?" "Ignoring me?" I watched Ethan brush his hand away from Gavin's approaching face and said, "How would I know?" Gavin drawled, "What do you mean? Kicking me out because of someone else's man?" "No." I hurriedly placated Gavin, leaving Ethan hanging. As I kept soothing him, Gavin leaned in, holding my face. He looked at Ethan. "Ethan, why don't you step aside?" He didn't answer me, but called out to me again, "Wendy, can we talk?" Before I could reply, Gavin's lips pressed against mine, cutting off my answer. Ethan had gone some time without my noticing. Gavin tapped my head. "You really can't tell what he means?" I said with complete justification. I could tell, he's out of money and wants me to support him, but I didn't agree to it. Gavin was speechless. "Isn't that true?" I muttered as I walked, and Gavin suddenly stopped, breathing as if gathering himself. Then he let out a sharp exclamation that startled me. "Don't think about it anymore." Realizing he was angry, though I didn't understand why, I still cautiously moved closer and desperately tried to pull up topics to get him to pay attention to me. She stretched on tiptoe desperately to get closer to him. In the end she gave up, swaying his hand and lowering her head like a child who'd done something wrong and was begging for forgiveness. He suddenly stopped again, inhaled and exhaled, trying to calm himself. "You didn't do anything wrong, you don't need to win me over." Probably seeing the redness around my eyes, he sighed, bent down and said softly, "Our relationship was equal before, you don't have to flatter me to keep love going. If it's you, I love you, it's okay to make mistakes, understand?" Tears welled up in my eyes again and I couldn't hold them back. "Then why were you so harsh with me just now? So loud, so harsh?" He straightened up and scratched his head irritably, then bent down again and explained in a soft voice, "Not angry, just was a bit upset a moment ago." I asked seriously, "Upset about what?" He stammered, "Just upset that you were talking to that man." That night I felt very happy, but at the same time I received a text from Ethan that made me startle. "Do you know your boyfriend is fooling around with other women?" Ethan was hospitalized, something to do with his stomach, and it didn't seem good. His friends have been down these past few days and kept urging me to go see him, to spend more time with him. I felt weird and refused. I'm not a miracle worker who can heal him with a glance. Besides, I have a boyfriend. What would it look like for me to go running off to see him? "Wendy, you should at least go see Ethan. He's not doing well." Even Fiona came to persuade me in the end. "Wendy, just go see Ethan for a moment. He seems to be in a pretty bad way." Only then did I learn that he had stomach cancer. In the end I chose to go with Gavin to see him. His usually well-defined face had hollowed out, and he lay in bed looking utterly exhausted. He said he wanted to talk to me alone. I looked up at Gavin. Gavin stroked my head and, as if on cue, stepped outside. After Gavin left, the first thing he said was, "Wendy, I advise you to break up with him as soon as possible. He's not a good person. Ever since he sent me that text, I've been put off by him. I know my own situation. After spending almost half a year with Gavin, don't I know what kind of person he is?" I snapped at him, "Whether he's a good person or not, I'll decide for myself." He looked at me with the confidence of someone sure to win. "Wanna bet?" "What are we betting on?" "On your boyfriend's fidelity." "I'm not betting on something so meaningless. Besides, aren't you about to die? If I win, will you go to heaven and wish me wealth?" He was left speechless and finally said, "Just wait and see, men are all the same." Maybe it was Ethan's words that put me on guard, making me start to scrutinize Gavin's every move. I followed him for several days and found nothing. Suddenly I felt this behavior was childish and tedious. Perhaps I simply didn't trust Gavin deep down, and that was why a few provocative words from others made me go probing. I gave up the idea of tailing him and refocused on myself. When I left the house today, he suddenly asked, "Not following today?" I was busy organizing a proposal and instinctively replied, "Not following." "Go do something bad, then." He snorted and answered, "Oh. Gone?" He actually left? I put down the proposal in my hand, grabbed my bag and followed him out. I trailed him secretly to a restaurant, soft lighting, the kind of place meant for couples on dates. I was afraid Gavin would notice, so I didn't dare get too close. Sure enough, a girl ran over, threw herself into his arms and, without me hearing what she said, went upstairs with him. The girl looked pale with a rosy flush, very youthful. I clenched my fist. Cheating would be bad enough, but cheating with someone underage was even more infuriating. I slammed my fist into the wall, the pain making me flail wildly. I followed him up the stairs, and there were even more women upstairs. One of them was lying down, her curled hair and fashionable styling giving her a glamorous, mature allure. Gavin is disgusting, wanting both, stealing a young girl and a married woman. I pulled out my phone intending to film it to confront him, but as soon as I opened the camera I found Gavin was gone. Someone suddenly hoisted me up by the back, and a familiar voice sounded, "What are you doing?" I panicked, feeling like a thief caught with her hand in the cookie jar. "Since you're already here, aren't you going to eat with my family?" I must be out of my mind, unable to see such a simple truth. Who arranges a tryst at a restaurant? It's not like they're stealing rice, and one a girl, one a married woman. Someday I should make time to get my head checked. I answered with a flushed face, hello, Auntie." His mother was enthusiastic. "Wendy, come, sit down. You look wonderful, I often hear Gavin talk about you." The little girl sitting nearby, with crescent-shaped bright eyes, looked at me and said, "Hello, sister-in-law." I still dare not recall how clumsy and awkward I was as I ate that meal that day. I won this bet, after all. And right now I am happily, satisfyingly content. What about you? Have you found happiness?